Hello friends, it's Chari. Today I have a cute and punny card to share using the Quokka My World stamp set. So here's a look at that little mini stamp set with that cute little quokka. I'm going to stamp him out twice using jet black ink on some white cardstock. And since I'm using my stamping platform, I'm just going to move my paper over and I'm actually stamping that speech bubble twice as well. I'm starting out with a little pink for the inside of the ears. Then I have two shades of brown, and I'm going to start by putting some shading along the bottom and the sides of his face. Then I'll come in with the lighter brown and blend that out. I am avoiding the little paws and the feet because I'm going to use a different color for that. And I will go back in with that darker brown and add a little more shadow that I blended out. So here I'm going back in with that dark brown, bringing that shadow back out, adding a little underneath the arms, and then I can blend it out again with the light. I do recommend looking up some images of quokkas online to help with your coloring and your colors. Next, I'm using a dark brown for the paws and the feet, and I'm also adding a little texture with some dots of this color, and I will color the other one in the exact same way. I'm using that same pink that I used for the ears just to trace the inside of the speech bubbles, and then I am going to stamp the sentiment that says "Have a happy day" inside one of the speech bubbles. There are two sentiments in this set. We have a happy day and also sending smiles if you wanted to use both. Then I'm using the coordinating dies to cut out my images. I'm just lining them up and holding them in place with a little low tack tape, and then I can run that through my die cut machine. I'm also using the bottom of my little piece of paper here and my Grassy border die to cut a little grassy strip. And this is just out of white cardstock, but I will be adding some ink blending to this later. I also have one of the outside and stitched heart stackables as well as the lacy heart stackables, and these two coordinate with each other and will layer together. Now let's grab our ink and add some color to these white die cuts. I'm using freshly cut grass for the grass, of course. You could always cut this from some green cardstock or some green pattern paper as well, just depending on the look that you want. Now for that stitched heart, this is going to be the sky for my little scene with my quokkas. So I am using some mermaid ink to go all over and color this whole die cut piece. Again, you could use some colored cardstock or pattern paper. But the next thing I'm going to do is put this on my grip mat and bring in one of the Falling Hearts stencils. I'm using that same mermaid ink. I'm just going through the stencil, so I'm going to get a nice tone on tone with these little hearts inside the big heart. I also wanted to add some shimmer to this background, so I'm using my gold watercolor paints and just adding some subtle gold splatters to the background. I will set this aside and let it dry, but when you pull it off the grip mat and you turn it in the light, you can see those beautiful shimmers. Now moving on to my sentiment, I cut a stitched sentiment banner from some Ballet Slippers cardstock, and I am just lining up the two lines of the sentiment side by side so I get a nice long sentiment. These are on rectangular bases, so it is very easy to line them up. And then I am just stamping this right in the center of the sentiment banner with some black ink. Now that my shimmers have dried a bit, I can add this heart layered over top of the lacy heart, and I'm just using some liquid glue to do that. That'll allow me to kind of shift this around and make sure it's nice and lined up. I love that lacy frame that it creates around this heart. Now for the grass, it is a little longer than I want it to be, so I'm going to trim it down so that I just get this little strip of grass. And I'm actually going to grab my blending brush and kind of add a little green to those raw edges where I just trimmed it off so that it is green everywhere. And I will come back to that grass here in just a minute. For the background of this card, I'm using a piece of All the Sparkles Onyx 12 by 12 paper, and I've cut this down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I'm using the stripe side for my background, so I'm adding adhesive all over the back, and I'll just line this up onto my card base. I thought that this black stripe was really nice to make the heart and all the characters pop. I also wanted to add a little bit of inking to it to give it that vignette look. So I've got my black licorice ink and a blending brush, and I'm just going lightly on all the corners. You could do this before you added it to the card base, but I didn't think about it then, but this works just as well. It's just a little hint of shadow on the corners. I'll clean up my work surface before I move on so that I don't get any of that black ink anywhere. I decided to add some shimmer splatters to this background as well. I'm using the white metallic so it will be a little more subtle, and I'm flicking it off a block so I get really small splatters onto this background. So you're going to see here in a minute I'm going to clean off my work surface, but I'm going to turn this in the light so you can see those subtle shimmers, which I just think are so pretty. Now before I add my heart to this background, I wanted to add a little bit of twine, and I am using the coral hemp twine. I've wrapped it around 3 times, and then I am going to tie a bow over here to the left. Now I want this bow to be outside past my heart, so I'm just pulling my heart in to make sure I've got that tied far enough to the left to where it peeks out from behind the heart. I'll just make sure that bow's nice and tight and trim off those tails, and then I can add my heart to my card. Now for my grass and my sentiment, I want to add this right behind the sentiment so it peeks out from behind that sentiment banner. So I've just got a little line of glue centering that up in the sentiment banner. Then I can add this whole piece to my card. So what I want to do is make sure I have some foam squares on the ends because that overhangs the heart, which is popped up. And I actually should have added a little bit of glue in the center there where it's going to touch the heart, but I forgot. So you're going to see me pop this up here in a minute and just add a little dot of glue with my glue tube right in the middle, just where it touches that heart. For my little quokkas here, I'm adding some foam squares to them as well so that they are popped up. And I love this cute little pair of critters here in the center. And then, of course, I have the little sentiment, and that is popped up with a foam square as well. Now, of course, we want to add some little hearts because it's never finished for me without a little pop of pink with those cute little hearts. So I have some hearts with a hearts and stars skinny tag cut out of Guava Cardstock, and I'm just adding those with a little dot of glue. And then I will add some glitter to those with my stickles. I'm also going to add a little bit of glitter to the blades of grass, and I kind of just did a line underneath the quokkas as well. And so here is my finished card using that new Quokka My World mini stamp set. I just think it turned out so cute. I really love the heart as the focal point, and I love those black stripes as the background. Thank you so much for watching. Have an amazing day. Bye!